Hey everybody, and welcome back to Modo with Ellery. Remember, if you like this training and you'd like to see more training like this episode and like all the videos that we've had in the series of Modo with Ellery, please visit my Patreon account, patreon.com/Ellery, or if you'd like individual files for the individual episodes, you can get those on Gumroad, which is gumroad.com, again, /Ellery. Links will be in the video description. All right, so in this video, we're going to be looking at the use of drivers in the shader tree and how those can be used to get more control over the different textures that you have inside of your specific shaders. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I've got this this just open kind of ground. This is a relatively large grid here. This is about 100 meters across, so it's not anything small, but you can do this on any size scale. So just to note here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by just creating a texture on the surface, and then from there we're going to go ahead and use drivers and gradients in order to kind of reform that. And actually here to look at this a little bit better, let's start by hopping over to Photoshop here, where I've got just a gradient. All right, and the use of drivers and gradients works very much like using a gradient remap inside of Photoshop. So if I go up to Image, Adjustments, to Gradient Map, there we go. You can see that now my top half, which is what I'm editing here, has slightly shifted, and that's because it's using just a little bit a different allocation of the application of the gradient. So what gradient maps do and what drivers do with a gradient inside of Modo, it's really the same thing, is what it does is it takes the luminant value of your driver layer, or in this case our gradient layer that we're looking at in Photoshop, and it remaps it based off of the values that are in another gradient. All right, so that maybe that's clear as mud. So let's actually look at it here, which is why I've got this here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click here so that I get control over my actual gradient. So if you look here on the bottom, this is our incoming gradient. So this would be something like the driver inside of Modo. And on the top here, what I have is how my gradient is being mapped. So if I click here, and I'm just clicking on the white, you notice if I move my center point, it's going to change how this gradient remaps. And I'm not creating a gradient per se. What I'm doing here is I'm just saying, okay, if this is black or a value of 0, I want it to apply and be 0. And here at 50%, wherever we have a 50% gray here, I want it to get whatever value I'm putting here. So as I move this around, I can change things. Now I can use this to make more broad or sweeping changes. So let's say if I make this red, now we have a gradient that goes from black to red. Okay. Well, what if we go ahead here, let's put it in another step in the gradient, and we're going to put this one right at 50%. So wherever this gradient on the bottom hits 50% in value, let's say we want to make that blue. Okay, so now you can see we go from black at 0% to blue at 50% to red at 100%. All right, so you can add as many stops as you want here, and you can, you can do things like you can tighten up the curves that come off of this, so our 50% fades out more slowly, both incoming and outgoing. But basically, that's the idea here. Is we're just using a gradient here to remap the luminant values of what's underneath. All right, so let's just go ahead and click OK and OK here, and then I'm going to hop back over into Modo. All right, so now let's see how this actually works inside of Modo and how we can use this to get better control over our shader tree materials. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add, let's just go to Textures, and I'm going to use the Poisson cells, and let's see, let's go to our texture locator. I'm going to set that to planar on the Y, and let's make this pretty big, maybe 200 meters. There we go. So now we actually see, we zoom in here, we see our little cells. Okay, now one thing to note here is at the default values, this is not going to give us very much because the gradient is dealing with remapping kind of the flow of luminant values. And right now we have black, we have white, and a very, very small amount of transition. So the transition is actually going to be where the gradient is going to actually do stuff. So what I'm going to do here is let's go back to the texture layer. And right now you can see our cell width is 90% and our transition is 5. All right, and that's where we're actually getting this issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease my cell width. And let's go down to, I don't know, maybe, let's go all the way down to 20%. I'm going to make this pretty small, right? So right now these just look like these little disparate kind of islands. But if we then take our transition width, and let's bump that up to, I don't know, 75%. now you'll see that we actually get this nice transition section here. So we have black, we have white, and then we have a relatively large amount of transition between the two values. All right, so now let's go ahead here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to make that. Actually, before I do that here, let's go ahead and I'm going to change this to diffuse amount because I'm going to use this with a displacement here in a moment, and I don't want to have to change my values or change from colors to values. We'll end up doing that here later on, but what I want to do is I want to deal with, since I'm going to change this to displacement, I want to deal with values at the beginning. So the way to deal with values and still see it in a color is just to change to diffuse amount. So it's going to look very similar, but you know, it's just dealing with the cell value and the fill value instead of dealing with the colors. All right, so just a minor thing there, but wanted to mention that. All right, so now what we're going to do here is let's add layer, processing, and gradient. And this we're also going to set here to diffuse amount. All right, it's going to wash everything out. And actually, you know, I guess it was unnecessary to change this because we're going to go back and change this now. We're going to go down to shader control and change it to driver A. All right, so that kind of an unnecessary step, I guess, to change it to a diffuse amount. What I needed is change this to diffuse amount. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to change this from incidence, and then we're going to go down to shader control and choose driver A. And again, nothing's going to happen because I don't have anything in my gradient yet. So what we want to do is we want to create a gradient that will change our values so that at 0% we have black. So let's start here and click at 0%. I'm going to change my value to 0. So everything's going to go black. And then down at 100%, let's just go ahead and click and add something here. And I'm going to change the input to 100% and the value to 100%. So with that done, it's going to look kind of similar to the way it did before. If you want to take freeze frames, you'll notice that there is a slight difference in the fall off, and that's because we're taking a linear gradient and we're causing it to ease in and ease out. So if I actually take both of these and make them linear, this is really going to be exactly what it looked like before. But that's really not going to matter because what we want to do is we want to use this gradient now to recontour this. So let's say we want to make this so that it's flat, and then we get like a darker gray, and then we want to bump up to a lighter gray, and then down, and then back up. All right, so we can add that kind of thing just by going, I'm just going to click, middle mouse click here to add some points. So we're going to go here, 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 something like that. So now you can see we have a much more interesting actual form here, all right? And what we're going to do is we're going to change this to displacement. So what we're going to get is we're going to get something like streets here, and then we're looking at this being a sidewalk, this being kind of a wall at the top of a roof, this being kind of going down a little bit, so there's like a little bit of a lip, and then this being a little bit higher in the center. Now, of course, if we've got this set like this, they're going to be really scoopy and roundy, and it's not going to give us the right impression. So what we want to do is we want to make these all stepped pieces. So if we just click on the step button, now you see we've got black, we've got dark gray, we've got light gray, we've got a little bit darker light gray, and then back to the light gray here. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up some values that will work a little bit better. So if we want this down here to be something like the street, it's 0%. A curb is not going to be much higher, so make the sidewalk 5%. All right. And it's going to fade out here, but we'll see this when we turn it into a displacement. And then the wall here, I'm going to change the wall height. Let's go not to 100, but maybe to 85%. And then this is going to be the area down below the lip. Let's put this at maybe 75%. Looks like we're almost there. And then it's going to go back up to 100. So we're going to have a little bit of a higher raised section in the middle. So in order to see this in action, all we have to do now is change this from diffuse amount. Let's right click, and we'll change this to displacement. And at first, it's not going to look like much because my displacement value is pretty low for an area this size. So what we're going to do is go to the material here and take the material, and I'm going to set my displacement distance is only at 20 millimeters. So let's make this a little bit taller. Let's say we want these to be buildings. So let's maybe make it 3.5 meters. And we'll go here. And at first, this is going to look really jagged. And really, this is just going to be some preview artifacts. So if we give this a second here, it will update and we'll actually see, here we go, we'll actually see more proper heights. So now what we've got is kind of a building with a rooftop, smaller thing on top, and then we've got like a little bit of an area that would be outdoors area around it. Now, obviously, this isn't the kind of thing that's going to work for high res close-ups, but if you want to take and make something that's going to be off in the distance, like some kind of medieval or fantasy village where everything's kind of packed in and the streets kind of have this meandering quality to them, then, hey, this is actually going to work relatively well. And now, so here, let's look and see how we can further use the drivers to kind of continue along the same line. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take it, and let's pause our rendering because it's going to speed us up. I'm going to take this and I'm going to duplicate this this displacement. So let's just go ahead and duplicate it, and I'm going to change this now to diffuse color. Now, for doing the displacement, we've gone ahead and made these value levels. So what we'll want to do is if we want to change these to colors, we'll actually have to go in and add in the colors. But what we can do is we can go into the value here and see this one's at 19%, and I'm just going to remember where these are. We've got 19, 41.5, and then 51%. So let's go ahead. Let's go to the RGB. I'm going to start by making this really dark because this is going to be the streets. And then we'll add one here at 19. Let's make sure you're at 19. And then we were at, where were we here? 41.5 and 51. Okay, so let's go back here and let's put one at 41.5 and then at 51. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing here, and actually here we'll put one down at 100 as well. And make sure right up at 100. So I'm going to take these, and I'm also going to make these stepped. So let's do that. And then I can just pick out different colors. So this one, I already got set to kind of a darkish gray. So that's going to be our street. We're going to make the sidewalks a lot lighter. So this is going to be the sidewalk here. And then our building facades, let's go with something kind of, I don't know, like a dirt kind of colored. Maybe give it a little bit of red to it. There we go. And then this is going to be the area, kind of the little walkway open area. So let's just make that a little different color here, a little lighter, a little more orangey. And then this is going to be the building that's up on top. So let's just give it a different color. Yeah, something like that ought to do. And now you can see these actually line up with everything that was in there. So if we go ahead and unpause our render, we give this a second to go, it's now going to have colors that are going to be applied to the different sections, and we may need to do a little bit of tweaking, but for the most part, this is going to work pretty well. So we can see we've got the street kind of one color, we've got the sidewalks, we've got the buildings, and we have a little bit of kind of roughness here in this transition, and you'll have to actually do renders to be able to get this to look really good. This is one area where preview can sometimes really break down, and you can get it to get better results, but we'll look at that in another episode. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and fire off a render, and I'll pause the video obviously, and we'll look at this actually rendered out with more precise displacement. So let's go ahead and hit render, and then we'll come back in just a second. Alright, so there you can see this rendered. It would need a little bit of work actually to make this work. And one thing to note here is this is actually the second render. The first time that I rendered, because everything was in the exact same spots, we got a lot of bleed between the two areas. So what I did is on the color version, so in the color gradient, I just took and nudged everything to the left just a little bit, so slightly lower values. So you ended up with this, and it looks a little bit better. Everything's a little bit more blended. We need a little bit more tweaking to get the white of the sidewalk off of the walls. But there you go. You can see you get the general idea. And some other renders here that I've got. So you can see this is a shot, this one, instead of using all stepped gradients, this one I actually left some of the curves in, so you see a little bit of those scoopy kind of curves in there. And there's a camera view down inside. Here's another one very similar to what we've done. Now this is the same kind of technique, but I was using the panels, the sci-fi panels, out of the advanced textures. So you get something that looks a little bit more futuristic as opposed to looking more medieval or fantasy. And then this is another one that I took and then also added a second layer of displacement with some variation variation to the individual cells. So you get some variation in the different heights. And then finally down here, let's go look at this one. Now this one I also took and did the exact same thing, but on some rolling hills. And then I used the same gradient and the same texture to create a driver for replicators, and then used some glowing spheres to create the idea of little lights kind of throughout the area. So that does it for this. Really, the idea behind drivers is pretty simple. It just allows you to have greater control over not the gradients so much per se, but it gives you greater control over the color values in your existing texture layers. So that's the important thing to remember, is you're taking an input value, so input luminance values from dark to light, so from 0 to 1, and then you're taking and remapping that with a gradient. And this can allow you to do anything where, sometimes you just have zero control over the way you get transition from black to white, and the gradient will allow you to have more control over how that transition is made. Even if you're just using it with a black to white gradient, you can control the pitch, you can control the curve on each point, and you can get more depth of control over your underlying texture layers. This is a little bit of a kind of more extreme example where we're actually taking and building something out of it, but the idea stands. It's that you can take an incoming texture and get more control over the way your different inputs are transitioning from one value to the next. That does it for this one. I hope you liked it and this was helpful to get you to understand gradients a little bit better and how they can help your workflow and let you do more with your own texture layers. If you liked it, again, don't forget to visit the Patreon or the Gumroad accounts and like and share with your friends. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.